It is our pleasure having you for the news in Africa and the world. We open with attacks in Nigeria's Borno State, where at least 81 people have been killed in an attack on a heathen village, according to security forces. They added that roughly 150 gunmen on motorcycles opened fire on residents before looting shops and stealing cattle in series of an assault in 6 remote communities in Katsina State. Residents on their part said the attack was thought to be a retaliation for the earlier killing of members of an armed group by a local defense unit formed to protect against attacks and theft of herds, animals in the village and surrounding area. Ethiopia's Upper Parliament Chamber, House of Federation HOF, has approved to extend the mandate of the current parliament as well as regional parliaments and councils. The vote saw 114 in favor, 4 against and 1 abstention after a leading opposition politician, Kyria Ibrahim, resigned as speaker in an apparent protest against the decision to delay the polls. Lawmakers did not specify when the new elections would take place. Their vote was an approval of recommendations by the Council of the Constitutional Inquiry. The move lays to rest the question of what happens to the mandate of the current parliament, which expires in October this year. The elections meant to reconstitute a new parliament have been postponed as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. 4 months to the presidential election in Ivory Coast, the Electoral Commission has launched the annual revision of the electoral list. The process, which is to go on for 15 days, aims to enroll voters who have not yet registered as new adults or those who are not considered it useful to vote until now. 35,000 census officers will be deployed to over 10,800 centers, with about 100 for civilians in the diaspora, said the Independent Electoral Commission. They estimate that nearly 5 million people of the voting age are not registered on the list, which currently have 6.6 million voters. The time has come for the people to register and go to the polls to elect their candidate in the West African country that has experienced elections dotted with tension and violence for over 20 years. Lesotho former Prime Minister Thomas Thabane and his wife, according to a police affidavit on Wednesday, paid assassins a down payment of $24,000 to kill his ex-wife Lipolelo 3 years ago. Deputy Commissioner of Police Pakesa Mukete said Thabane and Masaya wanted the deceased dead so that Masaya could assume the position of First Lady. Thabane has not yet been charged, but police say he was involved in the plot using hired killers, and his wife is in custody accused of murder. The details were the latest tweet on a scandal that has rocked the Southern African state and prompted Thabane to resign last month over pressure he hampered the investigation process. In what is making news out of Africa, Europe travels on the cards for all tourists as the EU ban draws to an end starting on July 1. But as restrictions on non-essential travel to Europe eased, travelers from high-risk countries, including the US, may not be welcome at the outset. Joseph Borrell, the Vice President of the European Commission, told journalists the end of the travel ban will be gradual and partial. He added the move would take into account certain criteria and be based on a common coordinated approach by member states. Greece, whose economy depends heavily on tourism, has already announced it will reopen its skies from June 15 to a list of countries including non-EU states such as Australia, China and South Korea. Denmark and Austria, however, will only be allowing people from side-like countries. The United Kingdom, which is not a member of Schengen, has implemented a 14-day quarantine for anyone entering the country. Despite the recommendation of the EU, it is up to individual states to decide whether or not to open or close their borders. Still in Europe, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, has warned that the shock to the economy and living standards caused by the COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented and will have long-lasting effects as it forecasts a global recession of at least 6%. The Paris-based organization announces France, with their economy shrinking by over 11% this year, the euro area will face a drop of about 9%. OECD Secretary General said it would take time for confidence to return and that they are looking more at a U-shaped recovery rather than a V-shaped recovery. The OECD praised governments for reacting remarkably to the crisis. Over to the U.S., House Democrats have proposed sweeping legislation to reform police departments in the wake of George Floyd's death. That includes increasing police accountability for offense of misconduct and banning police chokeholds. A still grieving Philonis Floyd traveled directly from his brother's funeral in Houston to the U.S. Capitol to testify before the United States Congress in support of police reforms proposed by Democratic politicians. The bill is headed for a vote in the House by the end of June but faces opposition from Republicans and President Donald Trump setting up an emotional charged political contest going into November's U.S. election. Meantime, President Trump is to meet this Thursday with police officials in Dallas, Texas, and will give remarks on his views of police reforms proposals. Still in the U.S., Donald Trump, the U.S. president, is rejecting calls to rename American military bases currently named for Confederate Army leaders. Trump press secretary quoted him on Wednesday in a press briefing. A statue of Confederate President Jefferson Davis was toppled in Richmond, Virginia on Wednesday night. Elsewhere in the city, the statue of Columbus was pulled down, set alight, and thrown into the lake a day earlier. Memorials to the Confederacy, a group of southern states that fought to keep black people as slaves in the American Civil War, have been among those targeted by demonstrators taking to the streets after the death of George Floyd. This bringing Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi at loggerheads with Trump calling for the removal of Confederate monuments in the U.S. South. The U.S. Marine Corps and the Navy have both recently banned the display of the Confederate flag at their installations. A number of retired army leaders have also criticized Trump's stance, accusing the president of clinging to institutionalized racism. Thank you very much for watching the news. Don't go away, and until we meet again, do take care and stay blessed.